very nice to meet you at the Bitcoin conference in Dallas. I find it interesting that we are in a Muslim Bitcoin conference, and you became a Muslim and a Bitcoiner in recent time. So I thought
Yeah,
the audience of the Muslim Bitcoin conference and my audience on my channel, because we talk a lot about Bitcoin and Islam. So it's a perfect. You are the perfect candidate for the for the interview, I think.
yeah. Inshallah, we'll be able to talk about some good stuff,
Inshallah.
some interesting stuff.
Tell us about your background, about how you and then how you came to Bitcoin or to Islam. I don't know which one was first.
Sometimes I get confused about which one came first because they happen so close together.
Uh,
Before I was in Bitcoin for a while, a long time. Maybe since like I say a long time, but like 2019, 2020, during COVID times. But I was not a Bitcoiner. I didn't really understand what I held. I was, an investment guy. Like I liked investing in financial markets. Um, and it was around that time, like I really got into reading a
yeah.
lot. Like I started reading a lot, and I started to learn a lot about financial markets, how economies work. I started to learn about the history of money a bit then as well. So I knew the problems very well. Um, but my answer was just, well, I'll just invest my way out of it. Financial markets, this is the way, you earn money, you invest it, you become a good investor, you outpace inflation. That was that was my mindset. And I used to, and it that and at this point I was not religious. I would probably say I was agnostic. I believed that I believed that there was something,
Mm.
um, but my mindset back then was like, I'll find out when I die.
Yeah.
Astaghfirullah. So I'll find out when I die. Then I'll find out what's there and what isn't, right?
Yeah.
But this is when I was so I'm investing. Um, so I understand inflation. I understand that money is created, and but my answer is to just invest my way out of it, and I learn a lot, and I become an investor to the point where it's basically my second full-time job that I've got now. Is like I have my day job, and
Yeah.
then outside of that, I'm researching financial markets. I'm researching stocks.
Yeah.
Um, and great, like I was doing well from it and everything. I didn't become a rich man or anything, but I like compared to where I started and where I ended up, alhamdulillah, I put myself in a great place. So it was good. I'd come from a particular period in my life where I hadn't done, like, put myself in a bit of a hole. So I got myself out of it and got myself quite far, alhamdulillah. But that 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 was where I was at. But all of my friends around me, they were Muslim, so I had lots of exposure to Islam from a kind of like a cultural perspective and like the brotherhood of it all. So I always felt that very strongly.
Yeah.
During Ramadan, I used to still go to my friend's house and eat food with them and everything, and was always with their families and stuff. So I had a good exposure to
But your
the
family's background had a religious background, or?
No, so my family, my mother is Indian, from a family that is a Hindu family. So my grandparents were Hindu, and my dad is white English from a Christian family. But I
Yeah.
wouldn't say that either of them were practicing of either religion. It was never a big part of our lives. In fact, I would even say very much like, especially when I was younger, my exposure to religion was everything in school, right? In the
Yeah.
UK. So it was the way that they teach it in school. And I don't know what it was like for you when you were in school, but for me, what I learned of religion in school was very fairy tale like and very cartoonish. And
Yeah.
it was almost just portrayed as just like the image that you're left with in your mind is just this man in the sky with a beard in the clouds.
Yeah.
Something more like like Greek mythology than the Abrahamic faiths. And
Yeah.
the whole concept of the Abrahamic faiths was I was oblivious to it because they didn't teach it in this, like they didn't teach it in that way in school. I came out of school thinking of this very cartoonish type of idea of what they had taught, and
It
that
was
you
a
just had all.
Catholic background school, or
Yeah,
is that?
I went to a Church of England primary school, and
Mhm.
then my secondary school or high school, it was not religious. It was just I guess like a what do you call it? It had the religion was not a factor in it.
Yeah,
But even at
sure.
the Church of England school, it was just that you would sing hymns, but there was
Yeah,
no religious education.
yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah,
so that's the image that you leave school with it. Well, for me in the UK,
yeah,
and in my mind, as far as I've been taught, you have all these different religions that all believe in their own God. Judaism believes in their own God, Christians believe in their own God, Muslims believe in their own God, as far as I was aware when I left school, right? So totally different from what I learned later on, right?
yeah,
But so really, like I say, like as I was investing when I was older, obviously one of the assets that I wanted to own was Bitcoin because it was going up so much and everything. So I had some Bitcoin. And I learned a bit about it, but I was like all about, understanding blockchain technology and looking at all these other I was shitcoining hard as well. I've been through it all, the XRP, Ethereum, all of them.
yeah,
So I went through that whole phase. But I held some Bitcoin from them, and I even made a decision not for long after that to just get rid of everything, all of the other crap, and other than I think I still kept some XRP, but I put most of everything else into Bitcoin, and I just left it. I just left
yeah,
it. Funnily enough, at that time,
yeah,
let's say like maybe like 2021 now,
yeah,
I I had there was this guy on Twitter
yeah,
called Chris Johnson, and I used to follow him as an investor. Like he was a really good investor, but then he sold everything for Bitcoin, and like everything. He was not just selling his assets; he was selling his houses, his cars, everything to buy Bitcoin. I was like, wow, like this is a smart guy, and like I've seen him do really well from investing. Like he knows his stuff. And he just basically was telling people, like, just read about Bitcoin, like, go study it, and then you'll see why I'm kind of doing what I'm doing, right? So he
he was
mentioned the bit.
Bitcoin before also.
Yeah, 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 yeah,
Yeah,
yeah,
but
yeah, exactly.
he
Yeah,
recognized that the characteristics of Bitcoin at some point. Okay.
exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
So this guy learned it, and he made obviously huge life decisions off the back of it. So I was like, let me go try and figure out what this guy's talking about. Now, unfortunately for me, he mentioned the Bitcoin standard by Saifedean, and I went on Amazon, not knowing at the time that Saifedean didn't list his books on Amazon, right? And I ordered a book called The Bitcoin Standard, and it arrived, and it was not Saifedean's Bitcoin Standard. It was some random guy on Amazon who had made some knockoff book with the same name, and I read it, and
oh,
I was like, what is this crap? I know all this stuff already. It's just talking about this is a private key, this is a public key, this is a blockchain. So I put the book to the side. I left my Bitcoin on a Ledger wallet that I had at the time, and I just kind of carried on doing my thing, right? But like I told you, it was around like I had started reading a lot. I never used to read before, but around this time I started reading a lot, and I was interested in history because in like studying financial markets and money,
yeah,
you end up reading a lot of history. Like it
yeah.
just and I loved reading about it. So I
Everyone does that actually.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's like
Most people stay in the present and the near future. They don't move back or create or zoom out. Let's say.
yes,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah, and look at and then it's like it's such an interesting topic because once you start giving some time and attention to the history, you start to learn about all of these things that have played out in history and the lessons that you learn from it and the signs that you see, of things repeating themselves. And you also there's a lot of wisdom to take from history in general, no matter
sure.
whose history it is that you're looking at. But it interested me, and then I got really interested in Well, from a historical perspective, what does
Mm.
history say about? I think I probably had started at this point getting a bit disconnected from the way that Western society was and the way that my life was, and I found this whole life that I was in quite boring and meaningless in a sense that my life was very much about, going out and partying and doing all of these things,
Yeah,
and it was very there wasn't much else to it. And I guess I couldn't really explain a moment or a particular thought that I had, but for some reason I just really started thinking that, wow, like I started to notice that in a lot of these Muslim countries, like life looks like it must be great for these people who wake up, and they have a masjid near them, and they have like this whole element of religion and discipline in their lives and meaning. Um, it wasn't like that wasn't like a major thought in my mind, but I just thought it felt and sounded nice to me, right? Like the
yeah,
thought of it was like something very different to where I was in my life, and the
yeah,
thought of that felt very nice. And it then became just something that I was a bit more curious to learn more about, and it coincided with that time where I'm starting to get interested about history. So I'm like, well, let me go and look into the history of these religious figures, like the
mm,
prophets, and
mm,
see what the history books say about them. Like, what does the historical evidence say about Jesus, peace be upon him, and his existence and his life? Like, how well documented is this stuff from a non-religious perspective?
yeah,
And, why, like, is it that it's not very well documented? Because if it is well documented, then why do so many people refuse to believe in it, right? So, and so I was curious. I wanted to, I just became curious. So I started learning a bit more. And to be honest, think things happened quite quickly because at this time, it was during lockdown.
mm,
And my friend, he had us all around at his flat to have dinner. And so I think it might have been during Ramadan. And I went
mm,
there to go eat dinner with them. And he, afterwards, we were all sitting on the sofa, and he put on a video on YouTube. And this video was like the line of the prophets, right? So it was talking you through like the kind of like family tree, right? Because many
yeah,
of them were descendants of one another. Um,
yeah,
and it was a video explaining this, and the video was made by a Jewish guy, right, on YouTube. But he was explaining this line of the prophets, and as he's explaining it, and he's talk, I this is the video where I realize all of the prophets. This is not just a. It's not like Islam has its own prophets, and Judaism has its own prophets, and Christianity has its own prophet. This is the line of prophets of Abrahamic faiths, all
yeah,
descendants of Ibrahim alayhi salam. And I once I realized that,
mm,
and I realized there's this deep and well documented history, and not only well documented, but like consistent history across the three Abrahamic faiths. So
yeah,
we're not now talking about 1 billion people believe in this God and 2 billion believe in this one, and now we're talking about 4 to 5 billion people
mm,
believing in one God, different
yeah,
perceptions
yeah,
perhaps of that God
yeah,
and his characteristics and everything else, but believing in the same line of prophets, obviously with some slight exceptions of some slight branches that go off in a different direction, but ultimately the same God, one God, the same prophets, the same message,
yeah,
and all that is slightly different is the perception. So this got me really interested. So now I'm like, well, now we're not just talking about the minority of people all believing in their own little thing. We're talking about the majority of the world's population believing in the same thing ultimately.
yeah,
Uh, and that led me to just start reading. I started listening and watching a lot of Dawa videos online just to listen to like and there was there were some brothers that a bit rowdy in London. There's some brothers that just explain things really well and calmly, and I liked watching those ones. And then I was watching a video about I was watching a video of that Dutch guy, Martin
mm,
Lings,
mhm,
and how he went on a mission to try and discredit Islam. And then I don't know if you've heard his story, but
Yeah.
Yeah, so he's got all of these religious scriptures in his office because what he's trying to do is research the religion of Islam to write a hit piece, basically telling the world how evil it is and look at all this bad stuff that's in the books. And then
He
one
was a
night,
politician, I think, right? In Denmark,
yeah,
in Holland. Yeah.
he was like a far right politician, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
That's yeah,
like Tommy Robinson kind of.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So yeah, and so you read his or you listened to him?
Yeah, so I listened to his story about how he had like the Quran in his office, and then in one night it fell off the shelf and it opened
Mhm.
up on a particular surah, and it he felt like it spoke to him, and he went and he ended up instead of writing a hit piece on Islam, he ended up writing a whole book of the Sirah, which was the life of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and it's this green book. It's on my shelf there, but
Ah,
that was the Syrah, right? And basically, it's not the sealed nectar, but it's a and I might understand that there might be one or two small mistakes in it, but at the time, I just decided let me read this book, and I read it, and other than me getting really confused by everyone's names, because this was the first time I'd ever come across like Ibn this, Ibn that, like
yeah, yeah,
son of. So I was totally getting lost with the
yeah,
names,
yeah, yeah. Even
and but
Muslims get lost with the with that.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and but the story
Mm.
and not only that is as I was looking, I was checking, like how historically accurate is this? Because once you start to read this story, I had read the Quran at this time, so I had read it, but it confused me so much in the English translation because how what but once I had read this, now I understood what it was. Started to understand what various surahs in the Quran were referring to, which was like the key thing that unlocked it. Not only that is that you learn about the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, his life, and you start to look at it and you're like, this was in the midst of the peak of the Roman Empire, the peak of the Persian Empire, two like really well documented periods of history. So then you go and look, and this stuff is so well documented
Yeah,
that there is not a person on this planet that can deny that this man existed and all of
yeah,
these things happened. And they're so well documented. And you look into what were the incentives of all of these Arabs, Bedouin Arabs at the time, have been to lie about some of these things that are stories that are verified from multiple sources, and then you learn about how the stories have been preserved, the hadiths, and they've been passed down. And once I read that book, I just had a realistic think to myself about I'm now at the point where I can't deny the life. I can't deny the Sirah. Like that to me is confirmed. And if everything in there I believe is true, then you cannot deny that this is a prophet from God.
yeah, yeah,
And then the other part of it to me, which is almost like it's not a very spiritual thought that I had, but ultimately I had that thought of just like, what's more realistic? What is more realistic that there was just blackness and empty space, and two particles came from nowhere,
yeah,
somewhere. We don't know that they did. No one created them. They just appeared out of nowhere,
yeah,
and they collided into each other and exploded, and everything that we know came to be. What's
yeah,
is that the more likely story, or is the more likely story that even that potentially happened, but something made it happen? Something, a creator made
for
it
sure.
happen.
Yeah, yeah,
And when you look at those two options, like even if you don't read the Sirah and read the Quran and study the religion, like that's like it's actually a really um, convincing argument in itself. And
yeah,
from that
yeah, yeah.
moment on, yeah, I still had I still hesitated to revert because my lifestyle was not it was not a good lifestyle.
It's
Uh,
compatible with the
Not
yeah,
exactly, yeah. And but my one of my best friends, his older brother, he said to me, "Well, everyone, there will never be a perfect moment." And he just spoke to me about how Islam is not about being perfect all the
yeah,
time, and from the day one, it's a journey. It's about having intention to get better, And I thought a bit longer, and then I decided I was ready to take my shahada, and yeah, we did that. Alhamdulillah, that was in like 2023. Um, and yeah, that's that. And then inshallah, I'll get better year by year. But I try many things I'd like to do better. But as I say, like, sorry, because I know I've spent a lot of time talking about that part
Really interesting. Yeah. Yeah, especially you said that there was no in your mind before there was no connection between Islam and the other religions.
Yeah,
And it's so interesting because when you read the Quran, you see in almost every page that it's discussing and refuting the arguments of the some of the Jews and Christians who are losing the right path and it's very obvious in the Quran that it's the belief in all the prophets and the positioning of Islam as a continuation of this like holy message that came since Ibrahim and actually since Adam, but uh, it's so interesting because the media and the academia and the schools they try to disconnect Islam from this
yeah,
uh, position. Yeah,
yeah,
it's
definitely. And
yeah,
this is one thing I noticed, and now that I had, alhamdulillah, had a lot more knowledge about the subject.
yeah,
Now, the more that I started to hear certain people talk and the way people in mainstream media would talk and the way that, some of these very ignorant individuals would talk, I just really started to realize what an agenda there is and has always been, as far as I can remember, to really try and separate these things and make it seem like they're totally alien to each other. And
mm,
I mean, that is a successful tactic if you are someone who is in a position of power and wishes to retain that position of power to divide
yeah.
people that would otherwise have quite a lot in common.
And often we as Muslims fall into this trap. Especially, I notice this when I read the translations of the Quran. That many Muslims prefer not to use the word God as a translation to Allah.
Mm,
Though I find it actually that there are some very good translations which use this word the word God, and I think this makes the makes this connection. They reconnects, Islam with the concept of God and his superior attributes. So, like, I mean, people in general, when they say God, they don't think of,
yeah,
yeah, they don't think about a person, but about really a God, yeah.
yeah,
So, yeah, this is something to think about. Like, how do we, uh, um, do we present our religion and how we talk about it, and uh, it's very important for people to know that the concept of God in the Quran is like very near to this absolute concept of the Creator who's not they often present Islam as having like a local God
yeah,
somewhere.
yeah,
Yeah, like God in Islam or Allah in Islam is very, very universal. It's
yeah,
yeah. So
yeah,
this is something that
yeah,
no Muslim can deny.
yeah. This is it, and it's a common, like, for people outside the religion to hear you refer to Allah, and they obviously think that you are on a totally different kind of line of thinking to them,
Yeah.
what they're used to. They use the word God. Obviously, once they understand, but for some reason, this seems a really hard concept for people to get their head around. But like, you obviously have to explain to people that Allah is just the Arabic word for God. Um, and once you do these things, like I think that blows a lot of people's minds because they don't realize that. And it's like when you hear these far right guys in London doing the protests and they're shouting things about Allah, saying like derogatory things, and they don't realize what they're saying. Like you are mocking God. Just
Yeah,
you're just using a different language to do it.
yeah, yeah,
And then like I saw a video where uh, someone was in Lebanon, I think. I believe they were in Lebanon, and they were in a Christian part of Lebanon.
yeah,
Um, Either Lebanon, yeah, I think it was Lebanon, and they were showing them the videos of these protesters in London and what they were shouting about Allah, and these Christians couldn't believe it. They couldn't believe it because they're like, are these people stupid? Do they know what
yeah,
they're saying?
yeah. Yeah,
Um,
yeah. But nevertheless, it's interesting that this phenomenon that right-wing or conservative people in the West are finding their way to Islam.
yeah.
Uh, what do you
Yeah.
think about it? Where does it come from, or why it's happening now?
It is interesting, and that's why, and find it quite because like when we think of like right wing or right leaning people, right, from a political side of thing in Europe or anywhere in the West, really, what we're taught, like obviously many of them have taken this to a whole nother extreme, but ultimately, traditionally, they would be considered more conservative people, right? So they believe in more conservative values. They don't necessarily believe in much of like the extreme side of like the liberal agenda that you see today, right? So they're like opposed to that naturally, right? They are opposed to like having like a really sexualized society and like they expect more modesty and respect amongst people in general, and they expect the law to be followed and things like kind of these. I know I'm summarizing conservative values really in a really like narrow way there, but just some examples of generally what those people would believe about
Mm.
society. So it actually surprises me that it is those people that are quite often initially opposed to Islam because Islam embodies very conservative values of, you know, modesty, of like good behavior, of not um, completely being opposed to many of these kind of more extreme liberal ideologies. Um, and I think that is probably the reason why a lot of those people end up, once they have a moment where they actually open their mind and they open their heart just a little bit, that they actually see that the thing that they are like terrified of and the thing that they have so much hate in their heart for whatever reason, I mean, we know why, like it's years and years of programming. So you can't, so a lot of these people, they know nothing else. It's just the thing that they've always been told. Um, but once they take a moment and they look at it from a different angle, maybe it's sometimes like a particular story that they hear or a particular incident that happens and they realize, well, hang on, in this instance I side with the Muslim guy,
Yeah,
right? And it leads them to maybe ask some questions and look into something a bit more, and they realize that maybe their idea of society and what society should be is more aligned with Islamic values, which, in terms of societal values, is not that far off what traditional Christian values would have been, probably that they really miss from their country, that used to exist in their parents and their grandparents eras that have now faded away. And I think it, at least for some of them, it may have something to do with that.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Unfortunately, like on our side of the world, like the Arab or Muslim countries, often like intellectuals and media people, etc., they lean more to the left,
Yeah.
and there was historically always like approaches to try to bring leftist or socialist ideas near and integrate them into the Islamic thought. And this was one of the things that influenced me for a long time. Um, this school of thought that which is called like uh, um, left Islam, like socialist Islamism or something like
Yeah.
that. Yeah, and of course, we see the socialist agendas and ideas how far like how far in a wrong direction they are now, walking into a very dark place, with all these LGBT ideas and stuff like that, and like really like yeah, attacking family
Mm.
structures, etc. So also on the Muslim side of the world, like there's a realization that these socialist ideologies are like taking us into the wrong path. So yeah, it's good that like in the West there's now more realization about the dangers of these ideologies, both on a societal level and also on a economic and political level. Um, and also a realization on the Muslim world
Mm.
that we have to rediscover the origin of Islam. What was it bringing to the world, and not trying to make like false compromises between ideologies that don't fit into the Islam at all.
Yeah.
Uh, uh,
Yeah.
uh,
And it's
yeah.
difficult.
So
It's difficult, right? Because I feel like what's happened is you have an ummah that is very fragmented and not connected, as it should be.
yeah,
And you have various parts of that ummah being oppressed heavily.
yeah,
If we look at Palestine, Gaza,
yeah,
and endless places, not just there, everywhere.
yeah,
And unfortunately, when you're when you're weak and fragmented in comparison to historical how the Ummah has been historically, we are significantly weaker and
yeah,
significantly more fragmented. Um,
yeah,
and you almost like look for allies
yeah,
in whatever shape and form they come. And
yeah. Excellent point. Yeah,
yeah, um, that kind of ideological movement of that kind of, I guess, like socialist, quite extreme liberal agenda is there's a lot of virtue signaling in it. The right,
yeah,
like conservative people don't virtue signal. They really don't, like they don't virtue signal. Um, they are not like soft like that, like in that
yeah,
way. There's a lot of virtue signaling from that ideology in particular, where, and I feel like my personal opinion, and I see this all the time. I saw it when that whole Black Lives Matter thing was happening in the US, is that is a group of people, and you see it in their behaviors and the weird things that they
yeah,
the weird trends that emerge from that kind of cohort is that they are a people who it's almost like they want to feel oppressed. So if they see a group of people, and I'm not saying that like I'm not saying that anyone who's liberal, their support is disingenuous or like they do, but from the more extreme cohorts of it, they definitely is like you can almost feel like the minute that they see someone being oppressed, and they it's not like from a Islamic perspective where you should always side with the oppressor, but it's more that they want to be seen as being part of the oppressed, you know? as being part of those people that are oppressed. And that's the feeling that I have always got from that. And so they will always make themselves try to appear as allies, even when it may not be genuine, when it may just be more about making them feel better and the image that it gives them. And I feel like that is easy to fall for as well when you, as a group of people, as an ummah, are in a particularly vulnerable position, in terms of being weaker and being more oppressed than you have been historically.